Cyberpunk is
The better.
Yes,
Yeah.
my queen to shut up, bitch. Never change.
Well, you know, we did listen to a woman for a long time.
A long time.
Yeah. We watched
yeah.
her whole video.
So the other day, I came across a video on my YouTube homepage titled God of War, a game for chicks and midwits. As you can see here, the thumbnail for this video features Kratos from the modern God of War reboot hugging his son Atreus with big bold text that says, "My gay son." Now, I am a guy, you know what I mean? I'm a man. I'm a dude. Some have even called me bro from time to time. And I gotta say, no matter how hard you try, if Google knows that you identify as a man, then this type of hyper-masculine brain rot is definitely going to come across your feed, whether you like it or not. And this also means that I am no stranger to manosphere content. And clearly, I am into the classically manly hobbies of video games and tabletop role-playing games. So I did what any sane person would do. I clicked on the video. And that's when I realized that this video was published on a channel that I was already aware of, called Black Lodge Games. These guys have been on my radar for a little while now. I first discovered their channel during the whole "is YouTube killing D&D channels" drama that happened a little while back. I remember thinking that this guy right here made a pretty solid argument in his video, though he was perhaps a bit intense in his delivery. So yeah, I like to support other creators in the RPG community, so I subscribed to the channel and I moved on without thinking much about it. But then I saw this God of War video, and I began to realize a very concerning trend. Now, it seems to me that Black Lodge Games is run by two different individuals, and as far as I can tell, they don't share their names online, so for the duration of this video essay, I'm going to have to just refer to them as either Black Lodge Games or these guys or this guy, so please bear with me on that. Anyway, in their video, these guys make a very shallow argument that because the God of War reboot explores certain themes like emotional vulnerability, parenting, the cycle of trauma, and seemingly most important to these guys, what it really means to be a man. That this game sucks, and that it was made for the express purpose of punishing men for being men. They really lean into the idea that some dubious, creatively bankrupt cabal of man-haters developed the God of War reboot to punish and shame men for enjoying the previous trilogy. A trilogy of games that focuses primarily on over-the-top violence, all in the spirit of that falsified and overblown, hyper-masculine take on Greek mythology that we're all so familiar with thanks to the popularity of Zack Snyder's 300 and other properties like God of War that became so popular somewhere in the early to mid-2000s. Anyway, the idea that these guys are peddling here is that because this game exists solely to punish manly men for enjoying manly men things, that the new God of War games could then only be enjoyed by people who they describe as chicks, meaning women, obviously, and midwits, meaning, and this is according to Urban Dictionary, people with a middling intellect, neither smart nor dumb, especially who try to appear smarter than they really are. Now, I'd say that's a real pot calling the kettle Black Lodge Games type situation, but as a fellow bald and bearded white man who grew up feeling weird and insecure about all of my nerdy hobbies, I feel the need to express just how wrong these guys really are. But before we get into all of this, I do want to make something very clear. I am in no way, shape, or form endorsing or encouraging anybody to go over to Black Lodge Games and dog on them or call them names or do anything lame like that. Remember to fight darkness with light and, you know, be on your paladin type shit. That's what we're all here to do on this channel. I've actually been back and forth on whether or not I should even make this video, to be honest, and I'm still feeling a bit nervous sitting here and recording right now. But I'm overcoming that fear because I know in my bones that this message, this idea that men are under attack and that women and woke midwits are ruining our culture. The sacred culture of gaming deserves a thoughtful response and counterpoint presented by another guy who loves this nerd stuff just as much as they do. And regardless of how you feel about this, it is undeniable that millions of men around the world are in crisis right now. This is not a joke, it's not a meme, it's not an edgelord shitpost, it's the reality of the world that we're all living in. I know firsthand that there are a lot of guys out there right now who are feeling very lonely and very marginalized. It can feel like the whole world is out to get you. And if you rolled your eyes at that last statement, yeah, trust me, I get how ridiculous it sounds. But whether you like it or not, it is the truth. And these days, all anyone seems to want to do is to be mean to each other online, largely about stuff that doesn't really matter, like video games or what version of Dungeons and Dragons that you prefer to play. And I mean, just think about it for a second. It's kind of crazy how political the gaming community is these days. But at the end of the day, I am a strong believer that video games and tabletop RPGs are works of art. And art has always been political. Art has always existed to communicate ideas and help others experience and feel things that they otherwise couldn't or wouldn't. So in that way, I guess all of this does make a lot of sense. Anyway, I don't think it's much of a stretch to say that at this point, based on this video and other content like it, that a lot of people, who I personally feel are primarily insecure men, believe that chicks and midwits are the cause of this dystopic hellscape that we're all living in today. This isn't just games, people. This isn't just identity politics. This is a war for intellectualism. At least that's the message that these guys, Black Lodge Games, and other people like them, seem to want to peddle to their audience. Because honestly, men don't want to feel dumb and lonely. They want to feel smart and appreciated, just like everybody else in the world. Shocker, I know. And I'd like to believe that not many people are really buying into this type of stuff, but just take a look at the comment section on the videos that they post and the numbers that these types of videos are pulling in compared to the other content that they post. And it becomes very clear, at least to me, that their message of intellectual warfare against chicks and midwits is definitely resonating with a lot of angry, insecure men. And honestly, more than anything, that just breaks my fucking heart. Because just like every other guy in this target demographic, I too grew up as an innocent, impressionable child. As a boy, I consumed tons of media that glorified the same behavior that society at large now labels as toxic masculinity. And if you're watching this video, you're probably somebody like me, or you know somebody like me, and that means you probably grew up on stories involving men in spandex breaking criminal femurs, or women in chainmail and loincloths stabbing monsters with cool swords with other buff dudes in loincloths. And for a lot of us, we consumed all of it without the presence of a strong, real-life male role model to help us distinguish fiction from reality and learn what a well-adjusted, functioning man in the real world should look like and act like. The reality is that single mothers work all day to feed and clothe young boys. They plop them down in front of the TV, they put a DualShock in their hands, and they let Conan the Barbarian or Kratos or Rey Mysterio do the whole dad thing. And so that's why the games we played and the comics we read and the television we watched wasn't just a form of escapism. It was an example of who we are or who we should be. It's not just entertainment, okay? It's literally an essential piece of our core identity.
These people, the way in which they write these comments, they come off as, you didn't like the thing I liked.
Right.
This is an attack on the core of my being.
Which is what it is.
Yeah. They're not wrong, I guess. Yeah.
Despite themselves, they're telling the truth.
Yeah.
And yeah, guys, I hate to break it to you, but most of that content that we consumed as kids was really absolute garbage. It was garbage that was expertly designed to pull young men into a twisted, never-ending feedback loop of mean-spirited comedy and superiority complex. And sure, a lot of the games and other stories that we grew up with were pretty good too. Great, even. I'm a sucker for nostalgia just as much as the next guy, and I'm not writing off an entire, history of art and storytelling here. But let's be real, guys. A lot of it was pretty trash. And these games and movies and comics that are coming out today that so many people get so worked up over, yeah, a lot of it is, and probably most of it is pretty trash too. But not all of it. There's still great stuff coming out all the time. And in my opinion, at least, games like the God of War reboot are modern classics. The first game absolutely blew me away. The second game actually made me cry like a little baby at the climactic ending, and I don't know, maybe that says something about me, but anyway, I'm serious, guys. The God of War games aren't just mindless woke trash. They take us to another place, a place we can never go otherwise, a place where we can examine and question the big existential thoughts that we all have, like what does it mean to be a good father, or a good mother, or a good son, or a good daughter. They show us that a classically heroic man like Kratos can struggle to understand and contain his emotions too. And they show us that looking for those answers and solving those problems in ways other than mindless rage and violence can actually bring us peace and help us become better, stronger men in the process. And so this begs the question, what does it really mean to be a man? Like a real grown-up man? Is it beating up and screaming at people? Is it just banging a lot of hot chicks because you can? Is yelling at and hurting the people around you just because you're angry really what grown men do? Well, yeah, unfortunately it is a lot of the time in the real world, and in fiction too. But it's also exactly how a toddler behaves when they don't get their fruit snacks. Don't get me wrong, I can get behind those things being really fun and entertaining in the context of a video game, but why do so many men take all of this so goddamn personally? I mean, who exactly are these chicks and midwit men haters? And who exactly hates who here?
And Cyberpunk.
The better.
Yes,
Yeah.
my queen to shut up, bitch. Never change.
Well, you know, we did listen to a woman for a long time.
A long time.
Yeah. We watched
Oh, yeah.
her whole video.
We did.
This video really made me wonder. So I started digging around their channel to get a better idea of where these guys are actually coming from. Because to be honest, I sort of suspected that their God of War video was satire. But as I dug further into their content,
Jenny D got super pissed at me for challenging her ability to play / run an AP game. She asked her fans what they wanted. They said AP, and she started to make excuses as to why. What is AP?
I don't know, but it's funny anyway.
It is funny.
The only thing I can think of is Adventure Path, but I feel like that's not the answer. But either way,
Yeah.
you were almost certainly correct.
AP. Interesting.
I found more and more concerning messages on their channel. So, for example, this is a post on the Black Lodge Games community page. As you can see, we have a screenshot of Marisha Ray, who is the creative director of Critical Role, and a screenshot from an iconic scene from the movie Inglourious Basterds. It's a meme that accuses Marisha Ray, the creative director of Critical Role, the biggest name in the tabletop gaming industry, an industry that they share with Black Lodge Games, of being a fake gamer, all because she said scum save instead of save scum in a promotional video that she posted, or Critical Role posted. Now, this is really intellectually important stuff right here, so I need you guys to stay with me. Save scumming is a term used by gamers to describe a strategy in which a totally secure, confident, and not in any way insecure man, I mean gamer, may repeatedly save their game file right before they try out different strategies that may or may not bring about some sort of unappealing result. You know, it's quick saving before you murder the barkeep in Skyrim. Everybody does it. It's scum saving. I mean, save scumming. Anyway, why does it matter to these guys whether or not somebody, in this case a strong, powerful woman in the tabletop gaming space, a space that they share, use the term properly? And perhaps even more puzzling, at least to me, is why they would choose to use this particular scene of this particular movie to convey this particular point. So, if you haven't seen the movie, there's a scene where a British agent finds himself in a very dicey situation. He has to pretend to be a Nazi while hanging out with a bunch of actual Nazis. He does a decent job for a little while, but eventually he ends up ordering 3 whiskeys by holding up his pointer, middle, and ring finger respectively. I swear to God, I work from home all the time and I never hear any sirens. And as soon as I sit down to record a video, it's like the entire city goes to shit. Okay, but when Germans count with their fingers, they start with their thumb. So like 1, 2, 3. It seems kind of backwards to me, but the point is that this is the tell that gives away the British agent. The real Nazi figures out that the British guy is a fake Nazi, and then they both end up shooting each other in the balls. It is a fantastic film. It's actually unironically my favorite movie of all time. But am I the only one who sees the irony here? I mean, do these guys want to compare themselves to Nazis? Because in this analogy, the powerful gamer woman is the British agent pretending to be a Nazi, and the Nazis are gamers? I've seen men in their comment sections discuss Marisha Ray's appearance, calling her mannish, and just saying other creepy incel shit like that. And this is all coming from the community, who follows a guy who has said on a live stream that describing something as rapey is a domesticated thing to do.
That's another thing, super weird. I hear leftists and freaks online use super weird. It's something, I don't know what it is, but it's something like...
It's like, that's creepy. Or it's like when they say, like, it's kind of rapey.
Yeah, it's a weird way of, like, signaling to the in-group that A, I'm on your side, and B, I'm marking this other people as the enemy group without showing like any male aggression.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It feels weird. What you mean is, yeah, their safety tools video, I hated it. And it was mean. It was awful. I don't agree with any of their points. You know, whatever the case may be.
If they had said that, I would have been like, okay.
Right. I mean,
It
at least
was
just saying
mean.
something, but like feels rapey
Yeah.
or super weird. Feels
Yeah.
weird. It's
Ugh.
a very like domesticated, feminine way
Yeah.
of conveying like disagreement or
Yeah.
opposition,
Right.
which is contemptible.
While also sitting barefoot on his couch with his presumably best friend eating homemade cookies. So, do these guys hate Marisha Ray and Matt Mercer because they're fake gamers? Or do they hate them because they challenge their fragile image of what a man and woman should be? And worse, they challenge these ideas in their sacred space. A Nazi-controlled pub deep in occupied France. I mean, YouTube. And this weirdly aggressive hate doesn't stop with real women either. One of the most liked comments on the God of War video I've been talking about makes an argument that they're definitely not racist, but they hate the fact that there's a black girl in the game, because black people didn't exist in ancient Norse mythology, right? So creating an original character who happens to be a black girl is just bad writing. Well, that's a pretty rich argument to make underneath a video that argues the old God of War games, you know, the ones that are totally based on an authentic depiction of Greek mythology, and not pandering to an entire generation of men who grew up obsessed with a completely fabricated version of Spartan culture. I mean, if anyone wants to make the argument that a game or any other work of art is objectively bad because it's not an authentic reflection of the culture or materials that inspired it, then, if anything, the original God of War games are just as bad, if not worse, in these sins. The point is this, guys, none of this is real. It's all fantasy make-believe, and don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with loving and supporting and immersing yourself in worlds of fantasy and make-believe. But you're not fighting a war for intellectualism while you do it. You just don't like it when your bigoted beliefs are challenged, especially when your bigoted beliefs are challenged in one of the only spaces that you feel secure in, gaming. In the wildly popular video essay, How Comedy Was Destroyed by an Anti-Reality Doomsday Cult, Elephant Graveyard makes the very brilliant connection that all of these insecure men with bad or absent dads really love pro wrestling. And within the pro wrestling industry exists this concept of the kayfabe, or kayfabe, I think. Now, kayfabe is a term used to describe the phenomenon in which the fictionalized elements of pro wrestling are presented as being real. In order for it all to work, the audience must buy into the kayfabe. It's a delicate thing, and honestly, it's beautiful. To be honest, I used to just assume that pro wrestling was for trashy, dumb people. But I recently attended my first ever WWE Raw event. I went with my best friend who grew up with it, and he has always loved wrestling. And before I went, we were talking about it, and I asked him, like, what is the point of wrestling? Doesn't everybody know that it's all fake? And he simply responded to me, of course we do, but that's what makes it so much fun. And you know what? He was totally right. I became one with the kayfabe, and I had a goddamn blast. It really is just like playing Dungeons and Dragons. It made me feel kind of hypocritical in the moment. We all know that it's kind of weird that we're sitting around a table, speaking in silly voices, playing with little figures, and pretending to fight monsters and save the world. But that's what makes it so fun, right? It's the buy-in. It's that mutual, unspoken suspension of disbelief that we all share. It's the kayfabe. And that's the real danger here. God of War is not real. D&D is not real. Professional wrestling is not real. Children often struggle to separate fantasy from reality. That's why I thought pro wrestling was just for dumb, trashy people. Remember? I didn't know any better. But that's a big part of growing up, isn't it? Healing from your past trauma. Accepting and understanding the cold hard fact that while fantasy sure is fun, and it is art, and it is important, it is not real. Critical Role and Sony Santa Monica know this. That's why they create the art that they do. They help us escape this twisted hellscape we're all living in these days, and they allow us to explore and learn things about ourselves we otherwise couldn't or wouldn't. It's beautiful, man. I love it. But to so many insecure men out there, it's not a fantasy. It's real. It's everything they've ever known. They're still living in the kayfabe, and they're clutching onto it for dear life. It's safer and easier to sit back and consume rather than question and consider and the potentially uncomfortable realities. Realities where women can be successful business people, men can wear nail polish and cry and still be men, and that it's okay to be gay or have a gay son. Oh yeah, so remember that thumbnail I clicked on, the thumbnail that sparked this entire video essay? Well, like I said, the copy on the thumbnail says "my gay son," and it's in really big, bold, obnoxious font. So that's clearly a sticking point to these guys. And the video it leads to asserts that Atreus, Kratos' son, is a whiny little bitch. And I'm no Sherlock Holmes here or anything, but it seems to insinuate that according to this community of, who I argue are insecure men, that being gay, or having a gay son, I guess, is a bad thing. And yet, Black Lodge Games seems perfectly happy to profit and make a name for themselves off of the award-winning, industry-shaping work of an openly queer woman. So for anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, honestly, kudos to you for making it this far in the video, but also, we gotta talk about this game called Shadowdark, okay? Now, Shadowdark is an independently published tabletop role-playing game, or TTRPG for short. It's basically a simplified version of modern Dungeons & Dragons that is heavily inspired by the classic versions of the game that came before it. Shadowdark came out at this perfect lightning in a bottle time, because back in 2023, the company behind D&D made a big oopsie and tried to revoke the rights of third-party creators. Nobody liked that. But then Kelsey Dion, one of the most successful third-party D&D creators, came along and said, hey, you can use my new system, Shadowdark, to make your own content and sell it for profit. As long as you copy and paste some text in the front of your book, I'm totally cool with it. And of course, everybody loved that. And Black Lodge Games, the same guys who seem to enjoy comparing themselves to Nazis and think that being a whining and annoying kid makes you gay, released their own book that's meant to be used with Shadowdark. It's called The Shucked Oyster. Its primary feature is a whorehouse you can feature in your own Shadowdark campaigns. And I think it did pretty well on Kickstarter. I've seen people talking about it, and it seems to be well received. Anyway, I don't want to paint a picture here that Shadowdark only appeals to this kind of content and these kinds of people. There's all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds that love and play and make cool stuff for Shadowdark. That's why Kelsey made the license the way that she did. She wanted to be as inclusive and non-gatekeepy as possible with her game. And so yeah, you're probably thinking, what does all of this have to do with anything? Well, Kelsey Dion has gone on the record talking about her wife. She's especially mentioned how supportive her wife has been as she's worked to build a career writing and publishing TTRPG content, a career that ultimately led to the creation of Shadowdark. Now, I think that's pretty rad. Hell, I have a wife too, as evidenced by my living room, and she's pretty dang supportive. It feels good. It really does. But remember that I am a man, and Kelsey Dion is a woman. So, if she has a wife, I'm pretty sure that that would plant her rather firmly somewhere in the LGBTQIA+ community. Now, self-proclaimed intellectual men profit off of the work of brilliant women all of the time. This is literally nothing new. I just thought it was worth pointing out that these guys don't seem to mind when somebody's gay, or a woman, or a gay woman, so long as they can use their work or validation in order to justify their own rhetoric. Oh, and make money. In fact, in a way, they seem to really love and respect Kelsey. So much so that, much to my surprise, and apparently to the surprise of their own fan base based on this comment, they invited her to sit down for an interview on their channel. Now, like I said before, I have an insane amount of respect for Kelsey. I don't know her personally, but I have had some interactions with her online, and I do know a lot of people that do know her personally, and I've never heard anything but incredible things about her. She's also very happy to support the Shadowdark community, and she shouts out third-party creators all the time. She really walks the walk, man. She's the real deal. But as I watched this interview, it didn't take long for the true colors of Black Lodge Games to come to light. Just minutes into the video, this guy says that Kelsey's open support of the shucked oyster was his white pill moment.
Huge white pill experience.
Yeah.
It almost passes by without recognition, but the other guy seems to get a bit uncomfortable. It's almost like their cover was blown or something. Kelsey cocks her head and she says she's never heard of that term before.
I've never heard that term before. White pill.
And then the guy who said it straight up lies to Kelsey's face and says that he made it all up. It's his own term.
It's my invention.
Okay, I'll credit you. What is it?
I invented that. Yeah.
Well, surprise. He did not, in fact, make it up. I actually hadn't heard of the term white-pilled before, but I also haven't been on 4chan since I was like 16 years old, so you guys are gonna have to forgive me, but I did do my research and I'm catching up, okay? So, according to a definition submitted to, you guessed it, Urban Dictionary, being white-pilled describes struggling and sexless males having undergone a positive transformation. The term can also be used more generally about the future and all mankind. Yikes. Another definition clarifies that the state of having taken the white pill, which is essentially enlightenment and hope, with an acceptance of the good and bad realities of one's situation and a world they're in, with resolve to move forward and do what good can be done. That sounds great, but then it finishes off the definition by saying it is typically a graduation of being red-pilled. So there we go, guys. We finally got there. It does not take a genius to see the blatantly obvious allusions to red-pilled ideology that these guys use to attract other insecure, scared men to join them in their intellectual gamer kayfabe. So, according to a paper published on New America, the red pill is a term that comes from the 1990 film The Matrix and has become a framework for individuals to describe their awakening to some previously hidden supposed reality. This termination is used to describe their realization that men do not hold systematic power or privilege. Instead, they awaken to the truth that socially, economically, and sexually, men are at the whim of women and feminists' power and desires. As in the film, to be blue-pilled is to accept the mainstream narrative and choose to live in ignorance of the truths of the world. Red pillers see themselves as intellectually superior, i.e., definitely not midwits, to blue-pilled normies. New America goes on to explain that the red-pilled terminology grew in male supremacist forums and was adopted more broadly by far-right and white supremacist groups to describe their own versions of awakenings, conspiracist worldviews that often overlapped with male supremacist positions such as anti-feminism. Okay, so the successful kickstarting and public endorsement of a Shadowdark supplement focused primarily on adding a brothel to a game that these guys play, presumably with other insecure men, was the moment that pulled this guy out of his doomer lifestyle and brought him back into the safety and comfort of his Spike TV based whatever pilled kayfabe. Yikes. And you know what? As a designer and publisher of my own Shadow Dark compatible adventures, I gotta say, there's actually a lot of cool ideas in the Shucked Oyster. But I can't help but raise an eyebrow over the fact that they chose a brothel as their marquee feature. Because, you know, brothels are bastions of absolute manhood, right? Whorehouses are places where totally healthy and secure men go to pay women for sexual gratification that they could totally find otherwise. And they're totally healthy and respectful relationships with the women that they in no way struggle to find, respect, or hold on to in their own lives. Everybody knows that. They even have a small section in the book that clarifies that the Shucked Oyster isn't intended as an excuse to roleplay sexual encounters, but that if you choose to do so, they can only ask you to be normal about it. Even though they say, we know that may be difficult for many of you. Look, it's this type of thinly veiled hint hint, shove shove nods towards their white pilled or red pilled or whatever pilled audience of men that says, hey, we see you and we get you, but we won't fully embrace you because we want people like Kelsey Dion to like us. To fully embrace you in public would be just a step too far. But don't get it twisted, guys. You know who we really are. You know how we really feel. The blue-pilled normies just wouldn't get it. And look, I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with featuring brothels in your fantasy gaming endeavors. Unlike a lot of things that these guys seem to love and adore, brothels are actually real things. They exist for better and worse, and they're not something that should be shied away from, especially in forms of art, where audiences can explore everything that comes with a brothel and consider what all of that means, how they affect the community that they're in, and the women that work within them in a safe and constructive way. But again, this really does raise the question here. What exactly makes a compelling story? Is it simply the fact that whores exist and we get to call them whores as much as possible because these women are whores? Or is it addressing these subjects with nuance and respect? Because I gotta say, in their video promoting the Shucked Oyster, this guy really leans into the latter camp. Throughout the video, he refers to the women of the Shucked Oyster as ladies.
Fine ladies.
But also whores and harlots and frumpets or strumpets or something like that.
We wanted the bizarre prostitutes, any of these surly whores, is to simulate the catty and mercurial nature of the prostitutes, that both the whores, awful trollops, the ladies are fickle. The next time you see these painted strumpets.
Man, it really is nice to see men approach these complex subject matters with a deep respect and intellectual prowess. This book is definitely not for midwits. And look, am I saying this is all irrefutable proof that these guys and the men in their comment sections and the millions of other scared and insecure men out there today actually feel this way about the women in their real life? No, of course not. But it is clear that to them, this is how women in the narratives that they create, these immersive narratives, can and should be treated. Like whores, harlots, and strumpets. But wait, come on guys, it's tongue-in-cheek. It's gaming, it's fantasy. This is all just for fun, it's not real. Well, the thing is, when we blur the lines between fiction and reality, when the kayfabe takes over, and everything edgy we do or say is just a joke, then nothing is a joke, and it all starts becoming very real. Black Lodge Games makes a big point throughout all of their content, and even on their channel description, that they are on a mission from God to make RPGs and the narratives that are told through RPGs more immersive. No compromises, they say. But they also assert that playing a character who grapples with the consequences of their past, who isn't always sure what exactly is the right thing to do, and who struggles to raise his son in a way that won't pass on the emotional trauma that he carries with him, is not compelling at all. That's a stupid game for stupid people and chicks. But a strumpet who will service you for extra XP between dungeon crawls? Now that is the type of engaging realism that this hobby needs more of. The absolute hypocrisy is insane. These guys are obsessed with pills, man. White pills, black pills, red pills, blue pills, but they make me feel like I'm the one taking crazy pills. So anyways, Nowadays, pop culture and other nerd culture like TTRPGs have definitely evolved into something that often challenges or even outright condemns everything that men of my generation and older generations were taught makes us men from a very, very young age. And in turn, men are left with little support to help them process this fundamental shift in their reality in a healthy way. Men are simply told that they should know better and be better. And men are often told these things in a way that offers very little empathy or understanding as to where their learned behavior actually stems from. And so it's only natural for these men to then lash out in defense, to attack who they see as their aggressor. And in the terminally online kayfabe that these men often live in, the aggressor is typically portrayed as woke women or weak mid-witted men who are guilty of such sins as promoting diversity, showing emotional vulnerability, and rebooting iconic video game franchises from a more mature and nuanced perspective. Oh, the horror. And these are the facts that we need to face as a community. We cannot simply continue to brush this under the rug and pretend like it's not happening. There is a putrid rot festering in the gaming community, and it's time to fucking acknowledge it. And as a guy who has struggled with my own sense of identity and masculinity throughout the vast majority of my life, it really concerns me that this type of rhetoric is meeting and resonating with so many men. Because ultimately, I know that so many of these men are simply feeling scared and insecure and looking for a community that will welcome them and they feel like they can belong within. But more often than not, we've been told either by our own fathers or father figures or just society and media at large that being scared and insecure are two of the worst and least masculine things that any man could ever be. And so rather than embracing and exploring these feelings as a natural part of the human experience, man or woman, men are often encouraged to bury them deep down and embrace the kayfabe. Just cheer for the baby face and boo for the heel, and use that rage that boils back up from within you to glorify the violent, confused repercussions that ensue. It's seriously pretty fucking twisted, guys. This is the type of ideology that permeates throughout our community. It resonates with men who struggle to make connections in the real world. I feel so passionate about this because I can relate, man. Like, seriously. I was a kid that grew up without a present father. I was bullied by boys and girls who called me fat, weird, gay, and even worse things. My first job was in a comic book shop. I read Spider-Man comics and I based my personality off of Spider-Man because I had nobody else there to show me otherwise. I loved James Bond, and I thought James Bond was the quintessential essence of what a man should be and what a woman wants a man to be. But thousands of dollars and countless hours of therapy later, I now see that all of that stuff was just trauma, man, and I worked through it. And I've never been happier or more secure than I am now in my entire life. But as a bald, bearded white guy who loves playing Dungeons and Dragons, I still face and interact with so many other guys out there who haven't got there yet. And honestly, I fear that a lot of these guys probably never will. I seriously cannot tell you how many times some other dude will lean over to me and crack a racist joke because I look the way I do. Or they say something disgusting about a girl in the room. They think that because I look like them and I sound like them, that I must think like them too, right? Well, no, dude, I fucking don't. Anyway, my point is this. I want men who are feeling insecure, who are feeling left out and angry about their situation and feeling like they're ready to just give up on everything, to hear from other men. Men that like all the same stuff that they do. Men that they can really relate to. That it is okay to want to be better. It is okay to want to change and learn from your childhood and grow. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be vulnerable. And it's okay to embrace the fact that not everyone looks and sounds the way that you do. And that everyone who does look and sound the way that you do does not think exactly the same way that you do. More than anything, I want you guys to look at what these immature, outdated, and insecure ideas of masculinity have told us and question whether or not it has ever been the truth, or if you've just been living in the kayfabe. So anyway, This entire video essay boils down to two very simple yet very complicated questions. What exactly makes characters like Kratos a man? And what exactly makes a story compelling? I feel so strongly that the ability to tell stories, just like making bread or starting a fire, is what separates man from ape. Storytelling is at the core of our humanity. Stories allow us to explore ourselves and others around us in ways we otherwise never could. Stories allow us to step into the shoes that otherwise would never fit us. And sure, it may not be comfortable. It may not feel right to you. But when you step out of those shoes and back into your own, you will do so as a stronger, more well-rounded man than you were before. You'll be more comfortable in your own shoes than you were before too. And that's what makes a great story. Not the same thing that we've seen or heard 1,000 times before. Not something that confirms our own biases, that make us feel justified in our actions and inspire us not to think differently, but to remain exactly the same. That's honestly just lame. That's the real midwit shit, man. And don't get me wrong, I'm no saint. Like I said in the very beginning of this video, I am very much a dude, and I love being a dude, and I have my fair share of guilty dude pleasures. I'm a sucker for crime noir and detective novels, especially books from the 60s and 70s. If there's a mostly naked femme fatale smoking a cigarette on the cover, make no mistake, I am definitely going to read that book, and I'm probably going to love it too. And that's not to say that these stories themselves are bad or anything. They're usually pretty great in my opinion. I can see why they were so successful, especially in their time. But more often than not, these stories are full of language and characterization that would never fly today. But I love them all the same. I love them for what they are. But I also appreciate how far we've come. Look, I sometimes find myself fantasizing about living back in those days, like the 50s, 60s, 70s. It all seemed so much simpler back then. It would have been awesome, I think to myself. Yeah, it would be awesome. For me, but for a lot of other people, for my wife, for a lot of my friends and family and colleagues and other people in my support system who aren't, straight white men, not so much. And that doesn't mean that I cannot enjoy these books. And it doesn't mean that modern stories that challenge these brooding, sexist, racist men I like to read about in my free time are a direct attack on who I am as a person either. In fact, men like myself should embrace themes and perspectives that we don't immediately relate with. Understanding the opposite side of the coin is an important part of any man's life. And I find that reading, watching, or playing stories is the best and most fulfilling way to do it. Men should feel proud to show emotional vulnerability. It takes way more strength to cry and say sorry than it does to lash out in anger and rage, because one requires thought, restraint, and reflection, and the other requires no thought at all whatsoever. And that's the real midwit shit right there. Anyway, that's all I have to say about this. If you made it this far, thank you so much for listening to what I have to say. I've got some really exciting stuff that I'll be sharing with you all soon. I think you're really going to want to be along for the ride. Like and subscribe or don't, I don't know. YouTube has been a shit show these days, so whatever. I'm tired. But regardless though, definitely do not forget to be kind to yourself and those around you. And until next time, venture forth.